Hey everybody, Ace Channel Liam here. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Welcome back to another episode of Form Fight. Form Fight is a series where we take a look at a Pokemon with more than one form, or a branched evolution, or counterpart Pokemon. We have a look at the differences between the Pokemon in question, and we try and work out which one is the best. And so we can see these Pokemon in action on the battlefield. We also have a Metronome Battle between them, just for a little bit of fun. If you're a fan of Form Fight already and you're ready for more, make sure you hit the like button, show you're enjoying the series. Let's go for 1,000 likes on this one, because it's a weird Pokemon that creeps everyone out, so let's do it. And of course, hit subscribe if you're new, so you never miss an episode. And of course, don't forget, use code ACE to save yourself some money on G Fuel. I'll let you guess the flavor. Look, it's orange and black shaker, so it's like tiger stripe. It's grape. Code ACE. Get yourself some money off. With all out of the way, let's have a look at today's challenges. Today on Form Fight, we're going to be comparing the two forms of Mr. Mime, which are Mr. Mime and Galarian Mr. Mime, and also Galarian Mr. Mime's evolution, Mr. Rime. Now, a Mr. Mime caught anywhere other than the Galar region will be in its regular Cantonian form. However, a Mr. Mime caught in the Galar region will be in its Galarian form, and from level 42 onwards, it will evolve into Mr. Rime. But what makes these Pokemon so different? Let's take a look. Cantonian Mr. Mime stands at 1.3 meters tall and weighs 54.5 kilograms. Its Pokédex information says the broadness of its hands may be no coincidence. Many scientists believe its palms became enlarged specifically for pantomiming. It's known for its top-notch pantomime skills. It protects itself from all sorts of attacks by emitting auras from its fingers to create walls. Galarian Mr. Mime stands at 1.4 meters tall and weighs 56.8 kilograms. Its Pokédex information says its talent is tap dancing. It can also manipulate temperatures to create a floor of ice, which this Pokemon can kick up to use as a barrier. It can radiate chilliness from the bottoms of its feet. It'll spend the whole day tap dancing on a frozen floor. And finally, Mr. Rime stands at 1.5 meters tall and weighs 58.2 kilograms. Its Pokédex data says it's highly skilled at tap dancing. It waves its cane of ice in time with its graceful movements. Its amusing movements make it very popular. It releases its psychic power from the pattern on its belly. Appearance-wise, Mr. Mime is a humanoid Pokemon with a round white body with pink orbs on its shoulders and hips, with one in the middle of its torso, and blue clown-like hair. Galarian Mr. Mime looks very similar, except with blue cheeks and a body that kind of looks like a blue Christmas pudding in leggings with an icy tie. Mr. Rime looks very much like an elderly version of Galarian Mr. Mime with a bowler hat and a moustache a la Charlie Chaplin, with a black coat and an icy walking stick and a red orb in the center of its torso with two yellow buttons on its chest that function as eyes. In their shiny forms, regular Mr. Mime's pink areas turn green, and Galarian Mr. Mime's hair, cheeks and legs turn purple, and its shoulder pads, tie and shoes turning to a dull shade of purplish blue. Mr. Rime in shiny form goes through very similar color changes to Galarian Mr. Mime, looking like an older, less saturated version of itself. Now let's have a look at the typing, weaknesses and resistances of these Pokemon. Cantonian Mr. Mime is a dual type psychic and fairy Pokemon, which makes it weak to poison, ghost and steel. It resists fighting and psychic type moves and has complete immunity to dragon type attacks. Galarian Mr. Mime and Mr. Rime are dual type ice and psychic Pokemon. This makes them weak to rock, bug, ghost, steel, fire, and dark type moves. They both resist psychic and ice type attacks and have no immunities. Now let's have a look at the stats and abilities of these Pokemon. Cantonian Mr. Mime suffers with rubbish HP and attack and below average defense, but has pretty decent speed, great special attack, and huge special defense. Defense against special attacks is very much this Pokemon's forte, just keep it away from physical mons who can swat it away like a fly. Its primary ability is soundproof, which protects Mr. Mime against the effects of sound-based moves, meaning it can't be damaged by things like Hyper Voice or Boom Burst, or have its stats lowered by moves like Growl. This can of course be useful for protecting Mr. Mime, as well as landing a free switch-in against predictable opponents. Its secondary ability is Filter, which reduces the damage Mr. Mime takes from super effective moves by a quarter. It's super obvious to see how this ability can benefit Mr. Mime, since the less damage you take, the longer you can survive in battle. Its hidden ability is Technician, which increases the power of moves with base power of 60 or less by 50%. This of course is handy for getting more power out of Mr. Mime's weaker moves, although most of the weaker moves that it gets are outclassed by moves it can learn of the same type and that often have added effects. Galarian Mr. Mime has a big chunk less special defense than Kanto and slightly lower special attack, in favor of a slight boost in speed, attack and HP. Honestly, the increase in attack just feels a bit pointless, since it's still not a great attack stat and the extra base power would have been better suited to increasing its speed or HP further. It's worth noting though that with Eviolite, Galarian Mr. Mime's base defense and special defense become comes 97.5 and 135 respectively, the latter of which is significantly higher than that of its evolution. Granted though, its HP is significantly lower, so I'm not sure how much help Eviolite would be in this case, but it's just an interesting point. Its primary ability is Vital Spirit, which prevents Galarian Mr. Mime from falling asleep. A sleeping Pokemon is of course a vulnerable Pokemon, so preventing against sleep can be very useful, but I wouldn't say it's the best ability out there. Its secondary ability is Screen Cleaner, which removes the effects of Light Screen, Reflect, and Aurora Veil for both teams when Galarian Mr. Mime enters the battlefield. This can be excellent for destroying opponents' defenses, forcing them to rely solely on their own defensive stats. Obviously, be careful that you don't have your own screens up because you'll get rid of those though, and that'd be silly. Its hidden ability is Ice Body, which restores 1/16 of Galarian Mr. Mime's maximum HP at the end of each turn when Hail is in effect. Whilst any kind of HP restoration can be somewhat of a lifesaver, only healing 1/16 each turn, especially when Hail only lasts 5 turns or 8 depending on your item setup, and the fact that someone needs to summon the Hail first doesn't make this the most dependable of abilities. And finally, Mr. Rime is slightly slower than Galarian Mr. Mime, but boasts increased HP and physical attack, as well as slight boosts to special attack and special defense. Its primary ability is Tangled Feet, which halves the accuracy of moves used against Mr. Rime whilst it's confused. Self-inflicted confusion damage is always a cause for concern, so with this ability, at least a little bit of the edge can be taken off, knowing that your enemy is going to have a hard time hitting you. Its secondary ability, much like Galarian Mr. Mime, is Screen Cleaner, and we already know about that. It gets rid of screens, you know? That old chestnut. And of course, its hidden ability, much like Galarian Mr. Mime, is Ice Body, so it just evolves and keeps the same secondary or hidden ability if you've got the secondary or the hidden ability, so that's inventive. But obviously, with its increased stats, of course, Mr. Rime is better suited to utilizing these abilities. Now it's time for me to decide which of these Pokemon I prefer, and I'm probably going to go with Kanto Mr. Mime. I like the Psychic and Fairy typing better, even though it's kind of outclassed by other Psychic and Fairy types like Gardevoir or Hatterene. But I certainly prefer its abilities to those of Galarian Mr. Mime and Mr. Rime. I think Soundproof is fantastic and very, very useful. Technician has its moments, and of course, Filter is a fantastic ability because reducing super effective damage is always a plus. I just don't have that much interest in the Galarian and Mr. Rime. I think they look cool. I think they look great. It's just they don't interest me that much. I don't really want to use ice types that often, and Kanto Mr. Mime just sells it for me because it's not an ice type. But of course, it's not just up to me to decide, it's up to you guys to decide which is your favorite. But before we do, let's have a little bit of fun. Let's see these Pokemon in action on the battlefield. It's time for the Metronome Battle. Before we get started, I'll point out these Pokemon have max IVs in all stats, 0 EVs in all stats. They're not holding any items. They've got neutral natures. I am, of course, giving you 2 battles. We're going to have Mr. Mime versus Galarian Mr. Mime, and then Mr. Mime versus Mr. Rime. They've all got their hidden abilities, so Kanto Mr. Mime is going to have Technician, Galar Mr. Mime and Mr. Rime are going to have Ice Body. The only advantage or disadvantage any of these Pokemon are going to get in these battles comes from their typing and their base stats. Everything else is all up to the metronome. Let's go. So here we go, it's Mr. Mime versus Galarian Mr. Mime. Who's got the best moves? Is it the one that moves like an actual mime or the one that moves like a tap dancer? Should it not technically be called Mr. Tap Dancer in the westernized versions? I'm assuming in Japan it's just Galarian Barrier, but that's another story for another day. We got Galarian Mr. Mime starting things off with Thunderfang to start off with. So, you know, Mr. Mime not known for being the best defensively, so it's going to take significant chunk of damage there, does shiny regular Mr. Mime. We got the shiny Galar, who is going to go for Dragon Claw, which doesn't affect the fairy type Cantonian Mr. Mime. Here's shiny Kanto though, first move of the battle. What's it going to do? Going to go for U-turn, which will be super effective, and another physical attack. So great deal of damage there from just a U-turn. Just a testament to the low defense of this Pokemon. Now we see regular Kanto going for high horsepower. All the physical moves coming out. This is going to be very, very short, isn't it? That's a decent chunk of damage there. Shiny Galar is already down to less than half its max HP, which does not bode well for the Galar team. Now it's over to regular Galar. What's it going to do here? What's it got in mind? It's going to go for Draining Kiss, so it's going to absorb a little bit of HP. It's actually at full HP, so it's not really going to, it's not going to restore anything, basically. Didn't do a great deal of damage either. Here's Shiny Galar, though, who is going to go for Recycle, which will fail because it hasn't had anything to consume. Here we see the Shiny Kanto going to go for Spark onto which of the, onto the regular Galarian Mr. Mime. So now that has actually taken some damage. Here we see the regular Kanto going for Fury Swipes. Again, physical attacks. They're busting out all the physical moves, although it's Fury Swipe, so it's not doing a great deal of damage. Although it is Technician boosted, isn't it? So there's 3 hits with the Fury swipes. Which way is this going to go? It's definitely looking in favor of Kanto at the moment, but we've learned from things like Farfetch, never count out the underdog. Here we see Water Pledge from the shiny Galar onto the shiny Kanto, bringing that down to less than half its max HP. So it's starting to even out a little bit. This field, we see we see Encore, which is going to fail. It always fails in Metronome Battles from the regular Galar. Here is the shiny Kanto going to go for Skill Swap and swap out its own ability to get the ability of its opponent. Very interesting there. So no more Technician for shiny Kanto, but Ice Body for the regular Galar. I think that benefits regular Galar more than anything, because now the lower powered moves are going to be powered up. Here we see Superpower coming out from the regular Kanto. Now remember, that is neutral on the ice and takes down shiny Galar. I was going to say it's neutral on the ice and psychic Galarian Mr. Mime. Does drop the defense and the attack of the regular Kanto Mr. Mime there, but I'm sure they're laughing right now because it's 2 against 1. But I guess we'll see what happens going forward. What is the Galar Mr. Mime going to do here? It needs to pull something out of the bag. Goes for Night Days, which is going to land on the shiny Kanto there for a good chunk of damage as well, and of course drops the accuracy by 1 stage, which should help that Pokemon avoid further damage. Here we see the shiny Kanto is going to go for Power Whip, and it's going to be avoided. Power Whip, of course, not that accurate anyway, but also that accuracy drop has to have affected it. Regular Kanto going Shell Smash. My word. Going to drop its defense and special defense by a stage each and raise its attack, special attack, and speed each by 2 stages. That Mr. Mime just became very, very dangerous. I would not like to be Galarian Mr. Mime right now. It needs to do something. It needs a miracle. What will happen here? Kanto is, the regular Kanto I should say, is going to get geared up with the Metronome, and it's going to go for Dive. It's going to hide underwater. If it hits this dive with the +2 attack, it could be all over for the Galarian Mr. Mime here, so it's got to be very careful. Goes for Leaf Blade, though. It's avoided by that Kanto that's underwater, even though we're at the top of the battle tower. Go figure. Shiny Kanto going to go for Bulk Up, increase its attack and its defense by 1 stage apiece. So going to make itself a little bit stronger and also a little bit harder to take down for the Galarian Mr. Mime. We know that Dive is going to hit first, so is Galarian Mr. Mime going to survive any longer? Regular Kanto hits that Dive, and it actually does a lot less damage than I thought it would. Oh, of course, because -1 attack from the superpower. Of course. Here's Rock Wrecker, though, from the regular Galar. Holy moly, this should do some damage. And it's on the regular Kanto. Takes it down in a single hit. My word, that defense drop and the defense drop, of course, from the superpower earlier really cost it. It was at -2 defense. We see Cotton Spore coming out from shiny Kanto. Now, that's not a bad play right there, because you're dropping the speed of the Galarian Mr. Mime, which means that shiny Kanto will get to move first on the next turn, which is a very, very smart play right there. So that could be the difference maker. Shiny Kanto here is ready now, moving first as we said it was going to. Going to go for Struggle Bug, which will be super effective on the Galarian form. Is that going to be enough, though? It's not quite enough to take it down, but it does put it in the danger zone and drop its special attack by 1 stage. Of course, the Galarian Mr. Mime has to recharge because of the Rock Wrecker, so it's over to shiny Kanto once again. What's it going to do now? It's got an opening. Gonna go for Acid. Now, Acid isn't the most powerful of moves. Is it going to be enough? It is enough, and down goes Galarian Mr. Mime. Critical hit. So the Kanto team have taken this battle against their Galarian forms. Very well played. That Rock Wrecker, though, from the Galar one was absolutely incredible. What a great battle between the two. And here we see the 1st generation versus the 8th generation. We have Mr. Mime versus the evolved form of its Galarian form, Mr. Rime. This is going to be absolutely beautiful. Basically, Kanto is now having the same battle that it just had, but against a much more powerful opponent. So, good luck to the Kanto team. Here we see the shiny Kanto, who won the previous battle, going for Power Whip again, like it did in the previous battle, but that is avoided, unfortunately. Regular Mr. Mime is going to go for Sandstorm, so everyone's going to take Sandstorm damage at the end of the turn. Don't know how smart that play is, but sure, you do what you need to do, I suppose. You do whatever you think is right. So at the end of this turn, everyone's going to get buffeted. That's what's going to happen. We see shiny Mr. Rime going for Haze, going to eliminate stat changes, but no stat changes have happened, so that doesn't really work in your favor, my friend. And now it's over to the regular Mr. Rime, and here it goes with Power Up Punch, trying to increase its attack stat. It's going to be 4 times resisted by shiny Kanto, so it isn't going to do a lot of damage at all there. It is a critical hit, though. Of course, increases the attack stat there by 1 stage. Now we get to watch everybody get buffeted by the Sandstorm. There's regular Kanto taking some damage. There's shiny Kanto taking some damage. There's the regular Mr. Rime. I keep calling them Kanto because they're named Kanto from the previous battle, but it's Mr. Mime and Mr. Rime. Remember that, Liam. Look, right? Shut up. Here we see the regular Kanto, the regular Mr. Mime. Here we go. Mime is going for Water Spout, though, and it's at quite high HP, so that's going to do some decent damage there. Good chunk of damage to each of the Mr. Rime. Now it's over to Shiny Kanto, though. What can it do to follow up on its partner's attack? Goes for Discharge. That's going to hit everybody on the field, though, so not the safest of plays there. Does a decent chunk of damage to each of these Pokemon. Not a great deal of damage to its partner, though. Paralyzes the regular Mr. Rime there, so that's going to work in the favor of the Kanto team. Here's Shiny Mr. Rime with Volt Switch, another electric type attack, onto the Shiny Kanto there for a decent chunk of damage as well. Over to regular Mr. Rime. What will Mr. Rime do here? Going to go for Mist. So it's going to shroud its team in a glorious mist. So, you know, look out for that. Don't try and lower any stats, basically. Kanto, oh yeah, everyone's getting buffeted by the Sandstorm once again. I thought there was an attack happening, but no. End of the turn. Everyone's getting buffeted by the Sandstorm. Thank you to the Mr. Rime that brought this Sandstorm in. You are an absolute numpty. Just... oh, what an idiot. I mean, it's actually affecting the Mr. Rime team more than anybody because they're both already in the yellow. Here's Shiny Mr. Mime, though, going for Toxic Spikes, which is completely useless in a Metronome Battle, so you've given an opening to the opposition, which is not a good idea. Not a good idea at all. So over to regular Mr. Mime. What will it do here? It's going to go for Strength Sap. It's going to lower the attack stat one stage of the Shiny Mr. Rime in exchange for restoring its own HP by the amount of the attack stat of that Mr. Rime. I believe that's how Strength Sap works. It actually does whatever your stat is. You get your HP increased by that, something like that. Here's a super effective Shadow Punch, though, from Shiny Mr. Rime. Lucky for that Kanto, that Shiny Mr. Mime. Very lucky that the -1 attack drop had happened. Here's Mystical Fire, though, from Mr. Rime onto the regular Kanto there, doing a huge chunk of damage. Just get used to the fact I'm calling it Kanto. I know one of you smarmy bastards has already said in the comments, he keeps calling it Kanto, but it's Mr. Mime. Just... you suck. You absolutely suck. Here we go, though. Speaking of something that sucks, everyone's getting buffeted by the Sandstorm. Nobody is benefiting from the Sandstorm, especially not Shiny Kanto, who is in the very, very danger zone right now. If that Sandstorm keeps going, that Shiny Kanto is going to die to Sandstorm damage. Here we see Octazooka from Shiny Kanto onto the Shiny Mr. Rime. Does it get the accuracy drop? It doesn't get the accuracy drop. Very unfortunate there. Here's the regular Mr. Mime, though, going for Giga Impact. My word. Onto which of the Mr. Rime there? Onto the regular Mr. Rime for a huge chunk of damage. I say a huge chunk of damage. That's a Giga Impact. It didn't actually do that much. So, you know, I'm just lying to you. Here we see Shiny... oh, another Rock Wrecker coming out from Shiny Mr. Rime. We saw this in the previous battle. Oh, my word. Onto the... oh, my word. Onto the, that was on the regular Mr. Mime. Holy moly. Here's regular Mr. Rime going for Avalanche. Which Pokemon? It's on the regular Mr. Mime, so that goes down. Holy moly, we know Shiny Mr. Rime is going to, oh, wait, no, never mind. I was going to say I have to recharge on the next turn, but the Sandstorm damage takes out Kanto. So there you go. Mr. Rime, as expected, has absolutely bossed it, tap dancing its way to victory. Well done, Chaplin, well done. So you've heard what I've got to say, you've seen these Pokemon on the battlefield, now it's time for you to make your decision. Which of these Pokemon do you prefer? Is it Mr. Mime, Galarian Mr. Mime, or is it Mr. Rime? Let me know in the comments and explain to everybody why your pick is the absolute best. And that's where I'm going to leave this episode of Form Fight. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit the like button. If you're new, hit the subscribe button. If you'd like to support the channel like these lovely people down here do, pledge to my Patreon. It's patreon.com/AceTrainLiam. And of course, save money on G Fuel, use code ACE. But until next time, I am Ace Trainer Liam. Keep on training.